Welcome to Criminal Law Unfiltered.
Hello and welcome back to Criminal Law Unfiltered with Robert M. Helfend. Robert is the founder of Helfend Law Group and has spent more than 40 years defending clients in serious state and federal cases across California and, of course, nationwide. With thousands of cases behind him, he's known for strategic and aggressive defense when the stakes are highest. I'm Leanne Lyon, and in this episode, we're focusing on what happens in the first days after someone is accused of a sex crime. Robert will walk us through what families need to know, the mistakes to avoid, and why early action is critical. Robert, when someone is accused of a sex crime in California, what's the first thing they should know?
Don't make any statements. Don't call the victim and try to talk her out of it or him out of it. Typically what happens is if a victim will call the police, people think that the police are going to immediately call them or come and arrest them. That's not what happens. The police have to do an investigation, and typically before the police will file a case or the district attorney will file a case, they want corroborating evidence. So they're going to try a little tricks and things to see if they can get the so-called accused to admit to something. Some of the things that the police will do is have the victim call the accused and get them to talk about it over the phone. And what they're looking for is for the person to say, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened," or "Can't we work this out?" or things like that. So you got to be careful. Don't talk to the victim, the so-called victim, over the phone, because she or he is probably working with law enforcement to get you to say something that you don't want to say.
Very key point right there. And again, the question was, what's the first thing? So if you didn't hear it, rewind, listen to that again. And what makes sex crime charges different from other criminal cases, both legally and emotionally?
Well, the issue with sex crimes is it's unlike a homicide. A homicide, you could have, videotaped evidence of right before the shooting. You could have gun casing, shell casings, even a bullet. You also have pictures of a victim.
Right.
And in a sex case, which, believe me, certain sex crimes in California carry the same type of punishment as a homicide, believe it or not, very severe. In these types of cases, you only have the victim's word versus your client's word, and that makes it very difficult. So what happens in these cases is you need to find two things in a sex crime case when a victim makes allegations against your client. Number one, you're looking to see what is their motive. Why are they doing this? Like if it's a child, did you just take their phone away? Did you take their cell phone away? Did you spank them? Did you take the computer away? Did you not let them see their real father? Because you see a lot of this with the stepdad and the stepkid.
Wow.
And then secondly, you're going to look to see if there's any inconsistent statements by the victim. And in these kind of cases, the victim is going to be interviewed a few different times by police officers. You have an initial report, and then you get probably a sex crimes detective on there, or some other specialized detective there. And so the victim is given the opportunity to make a lot of different statements, and you want to see if the person is consistent throughout every statement that they make.
Wow, it's sounds tricky. Emotionally, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that could be happening. How does the stigma or media attention affect these cases sometimes before they even get to trial?
If you get media attention, normally media attention is just, your client was arrested, and this is what the person is accused of. If you just let time go by, the media will normally drop it and move on to something else. They get their, 20 seconds of clickbait, and then they move on. So if they contact me, I have no comment. I'm not commenting about my client's case. But normally the media shouldn't play much of a role because by the time you get it to trial, it's a couple of years later. So they probably forgot about it.
Now, you just mentioned a couple of years. Are there occasionally pretrial restrictions that come into play?
That has to do with bail. And um, depending on the severity of the charge, a judge is going to decide, one, whether or not you should get bail. You should get bail. Two, should the judge impose something more than just a cash bail, and let's put a GPS monitor on you? It all depends. Every sex case is different. So
Mhm.
there's no cookie cutter in a sex case, what's going to happen, or how a judge is going to release you on a bond, and what terms and conditions of the bond um, the judge will impose.
So in sex crimes like this, is it common that the person being accused and the victim could come in contact to each other in that whole pretrial time?
No, not usually. They don't see that, cases like this take a long time. So
Yeah.
victims don't come to court every time to attend court proceedings. I have a case like that where it's the stepdaughter saying something about my client, and it's kind of fishy. So
Okay.
on cases like this, you want to, especially with a child,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking a child like a 7-year-old. I'm talking, a teenager. They get interviewed forensically by the police. It's very important to
Mhm.
take a look at like those interviews, and you need to utilize experts. So I have a couple of different cases right now where I have found an expert, a professor who happens to be in another state, and he specializes in like forensic interviews of kids. And in one of my cases, the police, when they would ask the child about, well, what happened next, the child goes, I don't remember. So then the police would go, well, you told Officer Smith that, and this happened repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. So that my expert's going, well, they just conditioned this kid
Yeah.
to, to answer. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for you to answer
Yeah.
according to what you told uh, this Officer Smith. And so it's very interesting issue. So now I'm putting I'm getting this expert on another case that I have. And so it takes a long time before you're ready for a trial like that. So there's no point in the victim showing up to court. I mean, they might show up in the beginning and then
Yeah,
they realize nothing's happening. And why am I taking all this time to come to court? And they get tired of it.
sure.
So they
Yeah,
don't normally do that. But if your client is, contacting them or something, that's a problem.
yeah.
That's how you get your client ends up in jail.
I'm just speechless to think of it, but yes, I mean, that's where you would end up with a restraining order of some sort, or I'm assuming, am I right?
Well, you get what's called a criminal protective order is
There we
issued
go.
the very first day in court, directing the client to have no contact orally or in writing and don't come within 100 yards of their house. So if you violate that, it's pretty strict normally. So if you were out on $100,000 bail and there is an allegation that you contacted the victim or the victim's family, it just depends on what the contact is, but you can expect that your bail will be doubled.
Wow.
Yeah, and you just don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So, yeah, it's a
Yes,
serious business.
it is serious business, and it's
I see that when because you were kind of tongue-tied there.
yeah, and that's a rare thing for me, really. This is it's a fraught topic for sure. We talked about it even before we started recording today. Like, this is not a topic that people just jump into. Hey, we get to talk about this today, because there is so much emotion involved when you're
Oh
talking
yeah,
between people.
it is, and it is an emotional type of a case. So, like homicides, at least from my perspective, they're not they're not emotional.
Mm,
Uh, it's not an emotional um, position that you get yourself into. But when you have something like this, a a sex case, it can get emotional. And as an advocate for your client, you really have to be mindful of that and not let yourself get into the trap of letting yourself basically sink down into this emotional level, because you need to stay focused and even keeled
yeah.
throughout this thing. And it's very difficult to do that in these types of cases, because in these types of cases, there is a tendency to, let's just say, elaborate, or, well, not elaborate, but I think the truth seems to get skewed by, in these types of cases, by the victim, and especially like the victim's like mother and the mother's relationship with your client. And so, you can see they're going off script, and they're, when did you decide to say this? It gets that way, and you have to be prepared for their embellishments, is the word I was looking for.
Got it. With over 40 years of experience doing this, have you seen you must have seen a shift in how things run, and in particular to sex crimes. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I haven't seen anything. In other words, I don't see any more filings on sex cases than I did before. It's still the same.
Okay.
Date rape would be a difficult uh, case to prosecute, because you know the a victim of a sex crime has to have a lot of inner fortitude, because they're going to know that they're going to, one at some point they're going to have to get on the stand and they have to be cross-examined by a defense attorney.
Right.
And that is inevitably, you are going to be questioned about your credibility. And that's, it's a difficult situation to be in.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, many of sex crimes victims understand that before they decide to go forward. Like I was saying in this case where my expert feels that the police were leading her down this path to give the right questions. I believe that child, who's not a child, she's in her 20s now, I don't think that she realized or thought it through that this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to get up in front of this 12 people with 2 alternates, 14 people, and tell my story, and then subject myself to cross-examination by some attorney.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
That's why it is emotional.
So, keeping all of this in mind, how soon should somebody bring in a private attorney instead of relying only on a public defender if they're accused of something?
They should do it as soon as they can, because you're not going to get the services of a public defender until you go to court. So if you were arrested, you may not be able to get a bond until you see a judge. So a public defender will then meet you at that point and then talk about your case, 30 minutes before you're going in front of the judge. Whereas with a private attorney, you can talk about the strategies ahead of time and what to expect. And a private attorney could also reach out to law enforcement and the district attorney so we can negotiate a day and a time when to come to court, and we could talk about a bond ahead of time. So, if you can afford, honestly, your own attorney in a sex crimes case, you should think about doing that right away, because it makes a big difference. Then, of course, you're going to be frightened. You're going to come to court all by yourself, and then you're going to meet this, stranger while you're in court. I couldn't imagine, being so frightened, and then you're meeting a stranger for the first time who's a public defender who's got 30 other cases that day. It's a difficult system. I mean, it's a good system, but if you can afford your own lawyer, you got to do it, and you need to do it as soon as you can. It'll just make life a lot easier for you to be able to go through the process with somebody you've been talking to for basically months before you are eventually arrested.
Excellent. Well, Robert, this was a touchy topic. You handled it with your usual amazing abilities, and I want to reach out to our audience and say thank you. Thank you for listening to Criminal Law Unfiltered with Robert M. Helfend. Facing a sex crime accusation can upend your life instantly. If you or a loved one are in that situation, visit robertmhelfend.com to learn how Robert and his team can help. Don't forget to leave a review, and subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Thanks, Robert.
All righty. Nice being here.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.